Fantastic. Let's go ahead and jump into it here. So, like I said, we have a really fantastic guest for y'all today. His name is Todd Harper. He is one of our Dubsado certified specialists, and he is also a certified Zapier expert. And he's an avid user of both platforms, loves them both, and uses them both with extremely high proficiency. I've chatted with him a bunch. He's extremely knowledgeable at both Dubsado and Zapier. I could not think of a better guest to talk about both platforms today. I'm just excited for everyone to have a chance to learn a little bit more about using Zapier and Dubsado. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Todd Harper. Let's bring him on stage here. Oh, Todd, I think you're muted.
No. Okay, there we go. Can you hear me all right now?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Thanks for being here, Todd. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, of course, for having me.
Yeah.
Hey there, everyone. I am Todd. I already had an introduction. I'm the owner of Business Tech BFF. We're a tech support company for small businesses and creative entrepreneurs. Like most of, a lot of Dubsado users are sort of our clientele. But we work with services and all kinds of tech tools. We do CRM setups, Dubsado setups a lot, other CRMs as well. We work with website builders, email marketing platforms. We build some custom apps occasionally for some clients. I'm a web developer. That's kind of my niche. But a big part of what we do at Business Tech BFF is just setting up automations for businesses. So that's what I'm talking to you about today. Specifically, I'll be talking to you about using Zapier with Dubsado. We'll also get a little bit of an overview of just using Zapier in general. Zapier connects to over 6,000 apps out there on the internet. So once you've gotten sort of your feet wet with using it with Dubsado, you can sort of use it with a bunch of stuff. So I'm just gonna, I will share my screen here and
we'll go ahead and give you full screen. And then if there are any questions in the chat, I'll be around to answer those. And then I'll jump back in at the end if we have any questions. All right. Thanks, Todd.
Perfect. Oh, no, I'm quiet. Let me see if I can do something about that. Okay. I hope that's better. I'm just going to bring this microphone up closer. If that is not good, let me know. But here I am. We're going to start off with a little PowerPoint. We're not going to stick here for too long. Most of it is going to be a live demo in Zapier. Okay, thank you, everyone. So here we're just going to kind of start off with this. So while I'm not directly affiliated with either Zapier or Dubsado, I'm about 100 people worldwide who've passed the rigorous process to become officially Zapier certified. So I am a Zapier expert you can trust. And I believe I'm also the only person who's both certified in Zapier and Dubsado. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that's true. Whether you're already a Zapier user or have used the platform for a long time, or if you feel intimidated by it, or if you're hearing about it for the first time today, my goal here is to leave you with some nuggets to get your gears turning and have some ideas leaving this webinar for how to start using Dubsado with Zapier. I'm not going to be able to say, every business works differently, so I'm not going to be able to say like, hey, this is how you should do this when I'm addressing so many people. But I hope to at least inspire some ideas to get you started. This is going to be slightly interactive. I'm going to throw out a question out there. We're going to kind of work, we're going to pretend to be a fake wedding planning company. And so I would love if you could put in the chat just sort of like a description of a crazy wedding, just something that if you were a client inquiring about a wedding and you have just some zany, crazy ideas, throw me some curveballs and we'll pick one of those from the chat to use in an example later on. All right. So what is Zapier? Zapier is a low-code and no-code platform that is used to integrate two or more unrelated web apps via some automated what workflows called Zaps. This means that APIs, webhooks, and other tools that used to only be accessible to web developers like me are now available to anyone, regardless of technical knowledge. So any one of you can start using Zapier today. I am confident in that. And you could start to create some cool automations without a single line of code. I just, for demonstration purpose, I threw together this kind of short thing of code. This is sort of an abbreviated version, and it really is abbreviated. This is only 41 lines, and usually I would take about 250 lines to write this. And this just is something that is taking an email from Gmail and adding the body of that email to a Google Sheet. This is what it looks like in code. This is what it looks like in Zapier. And so you can see that the same process is able to be happening in a nice visual, user-friendly user interface that to help your apps talk to each other. So we'll talk about some Zaps today, and I hope that you can get excited about some potential Zaps that you can create for your own business. All right. With over 6,000 apps already natively supported in Zapier and about 1,000 more added pretty consistently each year, Zapier is really ready to connect just about any part of your app ecosystem. Whether you want your email to control your blog, that is a possibility. If you want to make a record of everyone who unsubscribed from your email list and put them in a Google Sheet, that's pretty easy too. If you want to automatically save all of your email attachments and put them in a Dropbox folder, there's a Zap for that too. So just about any virtual process that you can imagine in making 2 or more web connected apps talk to each other, those can be automated with Zapier. And of course, Dubsado integrates with Zapier as well. Dubsado's tools and workflows are already super powerful on their own, but when you add Zapier to the mix, the possibilities are really pretty endless. Today, I'm going to show you some of the Zaps that are most requested by the clients I work with, specifically clients who use Dubsado. And I'll show you some of my favorite Dubsado apps, Zaps that I use for my own business as well. I already said this, but it's worth mentioning again, every business is different and has diverse needs. So I can't sit here and claim to say I can tell you exactly what Zaps you should build, but at least I hope to get your gears turning about what's possible for your business. So first, I'll explain what each of these Zaps does in this PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll show you a live demo of how you can go about setting them up yourself. Before you can build your Dubsado Zaps, you're going to need to connect Dubsado to Zapier. You do this by generating an API key or a token in Dubsado and then telling Zapier what your token is. I'm not going to show that in this presentation. I don't want to take time doing that, and it's a pretty simple process. But I have included some screenshots here of where you need to click to find those things. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of this slide, so that you could get this information later, that would be good. This is the first step. You can't start using Dubsado with Zapier until you've done this. So, all right, I'm going to leave this up here for 3, 2, 1. Take your screenshots. All right, and of course, this is being recorded, so if you need to come back and reference it again later, you can. Okay, so let's start with texting. Probably the #1 complaint I hear my Dubsado clients talking about in regards to Dubsado is that there isn't a way to text clients. They want to send text throughout the customer journey. They want to send text for appointment reminders. They want to send text for things like, I work with a lot of wedding clients or wedding business clients. I used to be called Wedding Tech BFF. So I still have a lot of carryover from that industry. So this might be a little bit of a wedding heavy webinar, but I promise it's applicable to everyone. But still, some people want text to go out for things like the morning of wedding, just to say, hey, I hope you two are doing well. Good morning. Happy wedding day. And they also want to text themselves. Sometimes a business wants to get reminders to ensure they don't miss important things about their projects. So, of course, with Dubsado's brand new app, there are a lot of push notifications that have just been enabled in your pocket. So some of those maybe internal texts aren't always as necessary now, but they are still important for some things. This is one thing we'll be going over, how to text your clients and yourself throughout the process. Sending new leads from the Not Wedding Wire and other third-party listings. Again, if you're not a wedding business, you probably don't use the Not and Wedding Wire, but you might use other third-party listings. If you're a realtor, you might use Zillow, things like that. So if you're on a third-party listing site and you don't want to get a lead and then have to go manually enter them into Dubsado, Zapier can make that connection for you and bridge that gap. This one sometimes can be a little tricky to set up because a lot of third-party listing sites don't have native Zapier support. So you have to use some sort of like backdoor techniques to get Zapier to read your emails and then pull information from those emails. But yeah, you can pretty much, as long as a listing site is sending you an email with the client's details, you can bring that information into Zapier. Or into Dubsado via Zapier. So this is a hugely requested one that I get a lot. When Dubsado is sometimes lacking in reporting features, they have some reports built in, but sometimes I get a lot of folks saying they're not quite robust enough for their needs. So it's good to integrate with platforms built for more dynamic reporting and project management. So if you want to track key performance indicators across your projects, it's a good idea to use a system like Airtable. You can track leads, bookings, invoices, transactions, and a whole lot more. And it just creates nice interfaces to display all of that data in whatever way that best suits your needs. I'll show you a small example of that in this presentation, just how that might look in an Airtable interface. And if you have a standard process you use for most of your clients, integrating with a project management tool like ClickUp is an absolute must, I think. You could, for example, create a new checklist every time a client books. So rather than spending time on repetitive tasks creating new task lists, you can just get right to work. Your task list just exists the moment someone books, and you can get started working on that project. So those were some of the Zaps my clients request most often. Now I'm going to show you a couple of Zaps that I use and love in my own business, and perhaps could inspire something similar for you. One thing I love to do is send personalized but mostly automated handwritten notes and with thank you cards and Starbucks cards. I send these to my referral partners anytime they meet a certain threshold of referrals, and I send them to clients who make a payment above a certain threshold. So if a client is paying, making a $1,000 payment instead of a $50 payment, I'll send them a nice Starbucks card with a handwritten note. I don't touch this. Zapier just does it for me the moment they book. So this is one of the ones I'll show you in the presentation. Every Monday morning, I get a digest of that week's Dubsado payments. It shows me the day I received a payment, who it was from, the fee I paid to Stripe, and what the net total was. And now that Stripe is integrated in Dubsado payments, this is actually even nicer. So this really helps me when I'm going about reconciling my books, and me and my bookkeeper can kind of get this weekly report and know, hey, these are what these payments are for. So that's pretty cool. At the beginning of nearly every phase of my client journey, there are automations being triggered by project statuses. So I have one Zap that listens for every possible project status and does different actions depending on where we're at. This can really be extensive, and you could do so much with this. I'm going to show you just a very small peek into what some of the possibilities are here, but you could imagine hundreds, thousands of possibilities with this kind of branching logic. The really nice thing is Zapier recently released a new, these sort of branching logic used to only be available for one of their higher tier paid plans. But now paths, that's what they call this, paths, these sort of branched workflows, those are available now on their lowest tier paid plan. So if you're paying $20 a month, you have access to this, and it really is limitless what you can do with it. Okay, before I go on to the next slide, I want to say that when you first get started with integrating with Zapier, you'll probably want to have an if this, then that mentality. In this case, sort of in this slide, if you have a project status updated in Dubsado, then update a record in Airtable. I technically also have this filter here. I wouldn't necessarily always say you even want to have this when you're building your first Zap. You just want to say, hey, when they update the status in Dubsado, update the record with that status in Airtable. This kind of just gets you used to how you connect different apps. And then you can start to build additional tools around that. And if you just do an if this, a trigger and an action, you can do those on Zapier's free plan. Having multiple steps in a workflow requires a paid Zapier plan. So that's something important for you to know when you go about building your Zaps. All right. So start with an if this then that mentality. But then once you start getting comfortable with Zapier, start having more logic like if this, then that, and that, and then that, and then this other thing, but only if it meets very specific certain criteria and conditions. Otherwise, do something completely different. You can start to create all kinds of cool, complicated logic to handle your workflows in really interesting ways. For example, I have a Zap that updates a whole slew of apps every time I get a new lead from my website contact form. And that all happens before the lead gets to Dubsado. But it all happens instantly, so they still get to Dubsado within 30 seconds after submitting a lead. And on that note, unless you use Show It, I typically recommend always collecting your leads directly from your built-in website form instead of using a Dubsado lead capture form. This is because instead of instantly creating a new project in Dubsado, it leaves the opportunity to do a whole lot of other stuff before bringing the project into Dubsado. And I'll show you why in my presentation, exactly why that's so useful and powerful. Now there are these are just a few of the over 100 Zaps I have set up to automatically run my business and the hundreds of Zaps I've set up for my clients. But I don't think there's a limit to the things you can do. And if there is, I haven't found it yet. I still get weekly requests from clients requesting Zaps I've never built before. There is just so many possibilities. So have fun, explore, do what you can. Like I said, there are over 6,000 apps that are natively supported by Zapier. And technically, there are apps that are not supported by Zapier that you can still use with Zapier using things called webhooks, or by, like I said, with those third-party listing sites, by having Zapier read your emails for you. With that, let's go ahead and dive into our live demo. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can flip to another screen. In the meantime, if there are any important questions that have come up, I'd love to hear them and I could answer them before we dive into the demo. All right. There we go. All righty. So here, I'm just going to show us Zapier here. We have, these are the examples I'm going to walk through today. I've pre-built some examples for you. We're going to go from appointment reminders to sending text messages to clients. We're going to show you how to write those custom handwritten notes I talked about. I'm going to walk you through my workflow for how I go from my website contact form into Zapier. It's not going to match exactly how I do it, but I think my Zap has probably 100 steps and this Zap has 12. I won't be able to fit all 100 steps into this presentation, so that's why that's kind of condensed. And then I'm going to show you that sort of branching logic with how you can use Dubsado project handlers to, I put here, AKA your workflows on overdrive. So if you really want to superpower your workflows, this sort of branching logic based on project status handlers is the way to go. All right, so let's go ahead and look at appointment reminder texts. The first thing I do, and don't worry if you don't use Google, if you use Outlook or even Apple Mail, Apple Calendar. Apple Calendar is a little weird. They don't integrate directly with Zapier, But again, there are some ways to work around that. I'm not going to be able to have time to go over that right now in this presentation, but it is possible if you only use that calendar. But we'll start with a Google Calendar here. If your Dubsado appointments are linked to your Google Calendar or another external third-party calendar, you're going to want to have Zapier read. And again, I guess I should say that Dubsado actually isn't even part of this Zap. The place Dubsado comes into play here is Dubsado is sending appointments to a Google Calendar, and Zapier is reading that calendar. So we want to start here with a new event matching search in Google Calendar. You'll want to link your Google Calendar account to your Zapier. So I won't show you how to do that exactly, but they make it very easy. And so you'll put what account you want to use with that. As a trigger, what I've done is I've put in a search term that says with cherished clicks studios. I typically recommend, here, let's hop over to Dubsado real quick, and we'll go to our scheduler templates. I always recommend having some consistent term that you use in your appointment schedulers, and typically with your business name is the best way to go because it's easy, it's recognizable, and it pretty much works with anything you could want to put in terms of the actual name of the appointment type. And the reason I recommend doing this is because then in this Zap, you can use this search term to say with cherished click studios or with your business name. And this is only going to search your calendar for appointments that have that in the title. And then, so it's only ever going to be triggered from these things that are coming from Dubsado. All right, so then we get an event from our calendar. You do always want to run these tests when you're setting up a Zap. And so you do that just by saying, well, there'll be a button that says test right now because I've already run an initial test. It just says find new records. But you'll want to run a test because that gives you some sample data to play with. So you can see here, this is what comes from Dubsado in the description of the Zap. And what's really important here is the client phone number. We can see that their phone number gets pulled in, and that's what we're going to use to text them once the appointment is coming up. So what we'll do is, and of course, I did a new event matching search here. So this is going to be triggered the moment a consultation or an event is scheduled. There are also triggers you can do that say like, hey, 1 hour before the event starts. And so like if we're in our Google Calendar, you can say here in event, instead of new event matching search, you could say event start right here to say, hey, 1 or 2 hours before the event, I want to text them. Then what we're going to do is only continue if description contains a phone number. And so what we have here is a filter that says description contains client phone. And this is the magical phrase that Dubsado puts into the Google Calendar notification or description. So it says client phone with a colon at the end. If it doesn't include that, we want to skip this. We don't want to run the Zap. So this filter just says, if it doesn't match this condition, don't continue the Zap. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use a filter step, or not a filter, a formatter step, and we're going to use a text event. And in the action, we're going to split text by, we're going to bring in the input, which is the description of the calendar event. And what you can do to do this, what's important to know with Zapier is when you click into a field, most of the time you can type things in here manually. So you could have static values, and you could say, hey, every time you run this Zap, I want you to look at this text, and it's literally just typed in. But you can also have dynamic values from previous steps that you've run. So in this case, I could pull values from both my trigger and my filter. And right here, I'm pulling from my trigger the description. And so you just come over here and you click description, and now that's pulling in there. And what we want to do is when we're splitting this text, we want to split on the word phone, colon, and then importantly, space. you can see there is a space right there. It's invisible unless I have a cursor over it, but you do want to include the space because we're going to start with the start of the phone number being the very first thing you see. And then here, this segment index means what part of this do you want to pull? And so we're using this second part because the first part is going to be everything in the description up until the word phone. So the first part is all of that. And so we want the second part that starts with this phone number. And that's why I've named this step start with phone number. And so you can see it outputs this, but we still have a little more work to do. We need to then take just the phone number out of the rest of this. So we're going to have another formatter step that takes another split text action, and we're going to take the input from step 3, and we're going to say new line, and they have this funky notation that has this square brackets with colons and then new line, all one word. You don't have to memorize that. They give you this handy link that will take you to a place that shows the different separators they support. And so what we're doing is saying new line so that we're going to split the text because here, if we start with phone number, the rest of this stuff is on a new, a new line. We've did a hard return from the phone number. So there we go. After we've done that and we've pulled the first thing this time, instead of the second thing, we are left just with the phone number. Then we're going to use another formatter step, and it's a text formatter. It's also split text. We're going back to that original thing from the calendar description, and we're just pulling the very first item, and we're not including a separator. And the reason is this is going to grab us the first name of the client because it always starts with, Dubsado's descriptions sorry, we weren't pulling from the description, we were pulling from the summary, and it pulls the client's first name here. In this case, sample is their name. We're also grabbing the appointment title, and this is a lot of steps. I mean, these formatters can start to feel cumbersome, but it's really important work leading up to things. So we're going to grab the appointment title, and what we're doing is we're taking the summary. We're making the separator be a hyphen, and then we're saying we want the last thing after the hyphen. And because of the way things get sent over from Dubsado, if you can read that little tiny text, it says sample client dash engagement session with Cherished Click Studios. We're going to pull all of that information that says engagement session with Cherished Click Studios. When we go over to our test, there we go. We've pulled the name of the event. I also wanted to include here a code step. Like I said, I'm a web developer. Coding comes more naturally to me than using these formatter steps. I think for a lot of you, formatter steps are the way you want to go. But I did want to show you how simple this can all be with code. Rather than running each of these formatter steps, I inserted these few lines of code with the description and the summary coming from that very first step. And go ahead, take a screenshot. You can copy this and you just put in a few lines of code and it returns all that same information. It returns the phone number, the first name, and the appointment title all in one step. So a little time saver there if you are willing to write a tiny bit of code. And then we do need a formatter step to convert the phone number. So we're doing a numbers step here, and we're going to E164 format. Now, depending on where you are internationally, this may not always be the most suitable format for your needs. You'll need to consult and kind of play around with different formats here, depending on where you are. For folks in the US, E164 is your friend. And generally speaking, with the +1 at the start, if you work primarily or exclusively with US-based clients. All right, so, and then if you do work exclusively with clients from a particular country, Zapier timed out. That's weird. If you work exclusively with clients from a particular country, you can put that country here so it does it consistently that way every time. And then you can also validate the phone number to make sure it looks right before it gives you the value. I don't know why it keeps popping up that it's timed out. I've never actually seen that before. Anyway, then it gives us in the data out here the formatted phone number. And this is the format that most texting apps use. And I've listed here just several options that people use for texting. I personally am a fan of OpenPhone, and that's what I use. But if you want to use ClickSend or Twilio or TextMagic or Easy Texting or RingCentral, these all can send text messages to your clients using this format of phone number. So let's go ahead and send an SMS in OpenPhone. And you can see this takes a lot of work to set up, but once it's set up, this happens automatically every single time, and is really cool. So here, what we're doing is we're saying, where's this coming from? It's coming from my main business line. Where's it going to? It's going to the number that we created in this convert phone number step. And then in this message, we're saying, hi, so-and-so, and we're dynamically pulling the first name from, in this case, the code step, but you could also pull it from step 5 here. Thanks for scheduling your appointment title. We'll look forward to seeing you on this date at this time. Please refer to the email we sent for suggestions on props and clothing to bring to the studio. I'm not a photographer. I don't know if you would actually say something like that, but let's just play pretend here. And then I'm saying mark conversation is done. That's an OpenPhone thing and doesn't really apply to every type of texting app. But if we say continue, and then I'm just going to say retest Zap. I might need to refresh because of that timeout thing. But you can see this text message just came through to me. It says, hi, Sample. Thanks for scheduling your engagement session with Cherish Click Studios. We'll look forward to seeing you on July 10th at 12:30 p.m. Please refer to the email we sent for suggestions on props and clothing to the studio. So there we go. As soon as someone, now all we have to do is click publish up here. And as soon as somebody books an appointment in Dubsado, bam, they're getting a text. It's a one-time setup and it'll work every time. So that is appointment text reminders. There are lots of other things you can send texts for. You can explore and play with those. All right. Oh, I understand, Amanda, your toddler is cranky before a nap. My 2-year-old is just going down for her nap right now. I can hear her behind me. Okay, so Dubsado to handwritten. When a new payment is received in Dubsado, this is going to be our trigger for this one. And basically, we're going to say, hey, if somebody has paid above a certain threshold, in this case, if they've paid more than $25, I want to send them a card with a Starbucks card included in it. And this actually, this company, Handwritten, sends robotic written emails with an actual pen and paper and sends them a card in the mail. It's really awesome. Okay, so here we go. Payment received in Dubsado. This is the trigger. Here's the test data that we get from it. What I'm going to do here is, because the test trigger or the trigger data that comes with a new payment in Dubsado doesn't always, and by it doesn't always, I mean, it never includes custom mapped project fields, where I want to customize this card that goes out to have a custom written message that I wrote to my clients. What I'm going to do is, since it doesn't come with the information in Dubsado, I'm going to pull it from a record in Airtable. So if I go over here and look at Airtable, we can see that I've written this custom message that says what I'm excited about. And it says, I absolutely love simple and intimate ceremony. It's going to be so charming. So there we go. We've written this note. I actually wrote this in Dubsado in a custom mapped field, and it came over to Airtable via another automation that I'll be showing you a little bit later. So there we go. That's going to be pulled from Airtable. So what we're doing is we're finding a record in Airtable. We're using Airtable data. We're saying find record. We connect our Airtable account. And then in action, I'm telling it which database to pull from, which table to pull from. I want to search for the client by field. So, and this isn't 100% accurate, I have to warn, because sometimes the person paying with the credit card isn't always the person you've already recorded as the client. So this won't necessarily work 100% of the time exactly this way. And I'm mostly doing this for demonstration purposes. If I were actually setting this up for myself or a client, I might use a slightly different trigger. But in any case, what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to take the email. Oh, actually, you know what? This does say client email. This is not the client. This is not the person who paid the credit card. This is actually your client. So this would work every time. Sorry, ignore what I said before. I'm an expert, and sometimes I make mistakes. Okay, so this is your client's email address. But then just in case, I'm also saying create Airtable record if one doesn't already exist. So that we're going to create a record in Airtable if we can't find one. So that ensures that this Zap never fails. And then what we can do is set up a filter that says field status exactly matches proposal sent. So basically, I'm saying if their project status is proposal sent and they paid more than $25, then I'm ready to move forward in this Zap. Otherwise, stop doing everything. I don't want to touch it. And then we're going to send a card in handwritten. And what you can do here, you can say who the sender first name is. So in this case, I'm just my company. So my sender first name is my business name. The address that it's coming from, the address it's going to, the recipient's information. This is all of your client information. The card you want to use, you can build a template in handwritten that is like a branded card. And you can say which handwriting you want to use. They have several different robotic handwritings that all look like human handwriting. You just kind of can choose which characters you want. And what's really cool is they actually, like, my name is Todd. It has 2 Ds. And one of the things that's really easy to tell that a robot wrote something is when the letters match exactly. And handwritten is really good about that. They actually, if you have 2 letters side by side, they'll make them different ever so slightly. So it looks more natural. And it says, hey there, so-and-so, and I'm dynamically pulling the client's name from Dubsado. Thanks so much for booking a service with me. I can't wait to get started. And actually, I didn't refresh the test data here, so I'm going to do that real quick and say retest step and just pull in this information again. Sorry, I must have changed the email address field here. Todd@businesstechbff.com. No, that is right. Oh, I wrote test at. That's why. Okay, I'm just gonna, instead of dynamically pulling the data, I'm gonna hardwire in Todd@businesstechbff.com just for this example. Don't actually do this in real life. Otherwise, you're always going to be searching for the same address, and that doesn't make sense. Okay, so this did actually pull the correct information, including that field that says, what I'm excited about. I absolutely love simple and intimate ceremony. And so now that is going to be, I wrote that in a custom mapped field in Dubsado, and it's going to dynamically be pulled into this card. And if I didn't write anything in Dubsado in that custom mapped field, it's okay. It's just not going to show anything. And it'll just say, I can't wait to get started. And that sounds natural in its own right as well. As a special thank you, I've included a Starbucks card with this letter, whether you're a coffee drinker like me or prefer tea or heck, even cake pops. I hope this makes you feel good as we both begin our work together. And then I sign off with your tech BFF, Todd. I send them a $5 Starbucks gift card, and it charges my credit card, and it'll also send them a Business Tech BFF sticker. I've actually sent stickers to Handwritten's warehouse in Arizona, and when they send a card on my behalf, they stick one of my stickers in it, and it's pretty neat. I'm going to go ahead and say continue here and say test step. And yes, it says failed to create card. Because I didn't actually give them a real address. If the person has an address, this won't fail. You can see this says no data. But if there were an actual address here, it would start to send a card. Darn, I don't have time to actually enter in an address here in this demonstration, but I would have liked that $5 a Starbucks gift card. Of course, from my end, I pay $7.95 for it. So whatever. Okay, we'll continue from there. Anyway, this is how you send a handwritten thank you note when a client pays their first payment. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to our folder and then say website contact form. And okay, I am getting a little tight on time here. I don't want to over rush this because I don't want things to be lost on you. But I am gonna kind of make sure I'm keeping up on track. Okay, so I told you that I don't prefer to use Dubsado's built-in lead capture forms, and there's an important reason why. And we're just gonna walk through that step by step. This is where I want one of those clever answers to a kooky wedding planning idea. Did anyone have one that we really liked? First wedding on the moon, underwater ceremony. Okay, what about underwater ceremony on the moon? Let's do that. Yeah. With a water tank as well. Really love horses and want them running free. Okay, so we're gonna do an underwater ceremony on the moon with horses swimming free. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this form that I've built on my website. And I'm just gonna put in that my name is Todd Harper. My fiance is Claire Wittick. We were married 7 years ago. So she's not actually my fiance, but we'll put in my actual email address here. My phone number. We're gonna say my wedding date is February 2025. And what service are you interested in? I'm gonna say full planning here. And then tell us about your wedding vision. I want to have the first wedding ever on the moon, but I want it to be underwater with horses swimming free. All right. Good luck as my planner. All right, here we go. We're gonna submit this form. And when we go back to Zapier, what we're gonna do is we're gonna run a test that says, hey, we got this form submission. And there it is. I want to be the first wedding ever on the moon, but I want it to be underwater with horses swimming free. Good luck as my planner. All right, the first thing that we want to do is correct the names. I saw a comment about, I didn't originally have this in this presentation, but I saw a comment on the Dubsado Facebook group the other day with somebody complaining about this. And so I added this code step that corrects the names. Go ahead and take a screenshot of this because you won't be able to remember it. But what I've done is as input data, I've taken partner A's first name and last name and partner B's first name and last name. I've dynamically populated them from the data that came from my email. And now imagine if I'm just going to change this hardwired data into Todd lowercase with a bunch of spaces behind it. One of the things that can be really awkward, especially when you're triggering a workflow in Dubsado, is if somebody puts their name like this, when you send them an automated email with their first name, it's going to come out like this. And you're going to send them an email that says, hi, lowercase Todd, with a comma all the way over here. And that can be super awkward. And you know, sometimes this isn't fail-safe because, or fail-proof because sometimes somebody's name does start with lowercase or there are spaces built into their name. And so you want to be a little cautious about that. And it can be kind of like culturally insensitive to say like everybody needs a capitalized first name with no spaces behind it. But you know, generally speaking, it's safe to assume that most people will have a capitalized first letter and no spaces trailing their name. So what this code is doing is it's just capitalizing and stripping spaces from each of these names. So if I go into the next, if I say retest step here, there, Todd, lowercase Todd with a bunch of spaces has become Todd with no spaces. So we've just corrected the names. And so rather than using the information from my my contact form, I'm going to use information from this corrected names. We can also use a formatter step to make the wedding date pretty. It comes from, in my case, Webflow. Webflow is the website builder that I use. And it comes in as 02-01-2025. And that's not going to be pretty when I send an email that says, hey, your wedding is on 02-01-2025. So I'm just going to change it to format it to be like this instead. A long month, double day, comma, years. If you're international, you might change those around a bit. Zapier has a good guide on how you would use these letters and in what order at this link. All right. So if I retest the step, we'll see that it comes across as February 1st, 2025. And then we can also reformat the wedding date to be not so pretty if we need. And in some cases, there are good reasons to do this. So I'll show you that later as well. Okay. Oh, I guess I actually need to retest the step because that's the wrong wedding date.
Hey, Todd, sorry to jump in here for a second. There were some folks that were trying to get a look at that code back in the name
absolutely.
reformatting. I'm just going to minimize your camera for a hot second. Then they can screenshot it, okay?
Perfect.
There we go. Give that a couple seconds. And again, it'll be on the recording as well if y'all wanted to double check that. Cool. Thank you, Todd. Sorry about that.
Yeah, my pleasure. No worries. Okay, so here, if we then go and here are some of the really cool reasons why using triggering based on a contact form from your website instead of a lead capture form. This is where it starts to get really powerful. We can go and create a folder in Google Drive for this lead. And so if I go here, you can just to witness it happening live in action. I'm going to go to my Google Drive and you can see that it's empty. Right now it has a templates folder, an archive folder, and a lost leads folder. When I go and say create folder in Google Drive, and I'm just going to go and say test. Watch as it gets created live. Now I have a folder called 2025-0201 Todd and Claire. This folder is, I didn't have to manually create it. It's just there in my Google Drive, ready to go. I can then have a step that says add file sharing preference in Google Drive. And we can say, retest step here. Well, basically what I've done is I've set it up to take the ID that was output from step 5. So that's how we identify that particular file. And I'm changing it to anyone on the internet who has the link can edit it. So now if I go look at that file, you can see that if I, it says who has access. And if I hover over this, it says anyone on the internet with the link can edit it. That happened automatically on its own. Of course, in this instance, I clicked run test. But when you actually turn this Zap on, now it happens on its own for the rest of all time. And then I'm going to create a document from a template in Google Docs. So this is another really powerful thing you can do is if you have a template, in this case, I'm saying sample wedding doc, and you can put, you can create a Google Doc that has, in Dubsado, they would be called custom mapped fields. In this case, I think Google just calls them template fields. You put in double curly braces something. So in this case, I'm putting partner underscore A and partner underscore B, partner underscore A first, partner B first, et cetera, et cetera. Here's their selected service, their event date, yada, 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 lots of information. And then what we can do is we can take that and we can create a new document from that template, filling in all those custom mapped fields. And so while you probably want to use Dubsado Forms for a lot of stuff, maybe there are things you prefer to be a Google Doc or a Google Sheet or a Google whatever, or even Microsoft ecosystem, you can do this as well. You can create Word documents and things. So if we go ahead and run that, now if I go back to that folder, the Todd and Claire folder, we've created this Todd and Claire wedding planning guide that has all of their information just automatically and beautifully filled in. There it is. We didn't collect in the contact form information about partner B's email or phone number, but there it is. And the vision, I want to be the first wedding ever on the moon, but I want it to be underwater with horses, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then we can also create a record in Airtable. I'm not going to walk through like where all this came from, but you would fill in each of these pieces of information, dynamically pulling them from other steps before. Continue, retest. Okay, there we go. Create record in Airtable. Awesome, we've done it. If I go back to Airtable, we can see that that got added. It says there's an error. Oh no, that's a different one. Where is it? Hold on. Sorry. Oh, maybe it's just taking a while to show up. There it is. Okay. So there it is with the vision. I want to be the first wedding ever on the moon. And we've included links to their Google Drive, their planning doc. So I can just click this and like now I have instant access to their planning doc and right from Airtable. And the good news, we can also bring that into Dubsado automatically. So that is what I'll show you next. Actually, before that, we can include things like create a conversation in ChatGPT. So I'm not going to read this in detail, but I'm giving it information, ChatGPT, about the user message. I'm telling it who partner A is, who partner B is, their service preference, in this case, full planning. I'm telling them telling ChatGPT the event date and their wedding vision. And then I'm telling it, hey, you are a wedding planner's assistant and I've just received yada, yada. This is another thing you can screenshot. I won't read it word for word, but this is a kind of prompt that I would use to send to ChatGPT. Probably the one important thing I need to highlight is you want to tell it your response will be placed in a pre-written HTML email. So while you don't need to include head body tags, each paragraph should be separated by 2 BR tags, i.e. BRBR in these angled brackets. I provided a sample inquiry below so you have an idea of the appropriate length, content, and tone. Here's a sample inquiry and a sample response that I wrote. Again, take a screenshot of this or watch the replay so you can play with this yourself. And then if we go from there, oh, also important, you want the maximum number of allowed tokens. So in this case, it's 4096 if you're using GPT-4o, which is the newest GPT model. And then it's going to write a little blurb that says, I don't know what it's going to say. ChatGPT is going to write it. Hi, Todd and Claire. Wow, what a unique and imaginative vision for your wedding. A truly out-of-this-world concept combined with the serene beauty of underwater and majestic horses swimming free. It sounds like a scene from a dream. Our team is currently reviewing your inquiry and we'll be checking our calendar to ensure we have availability for your special day, yada, yada, yada. Let's go. Okay, really important. So in a Dubsado lead capture form, you have a field that allows you to choose which workflow you want someone to go to. When you're building a Zap like this, you're going to need to tell it what each of these are. So in this case, if I want a full planning workflow to trigger, this is Dubsado's equivalent. Dubsado understands full planning to be this. Where can you get this random string of letters and numbers? If you go to a create project in Dubsado action in Zapier, and you come to project workflow and click on, instead of custom, if you click on project workflow, it'll pull in all of the different workflows you have in your account. And this gray string of letters and numbers is the identifier for that. So in this formatter step, I'm doing the event is utilities, and I'm doing what's called a lookup table. And the lookup key is the service. And in this case, I'm saying full planning, partial planning, and wedding management. I pulled in all of those strings of digits and numbers and letters. You want to be careful here. They need to match exactly. So you need to copy and paste or enter them exactly as they appear. Otherwise, Dubsado won't know how to catch them. But then if you've captured it correctly, and we go do this, we say test step. This is going to create a project in Dubsado. I'm going to go over to Dubsado here. And is that the one? Let's see, project date 2/1/25. Yeah. Okay, so it just created this project. it already has a bunch of pre-mapped fields. It says inquiry notes. I want to be the first wedding ever on the moon. It has a link to the Google Drive. I can go from my Dubsado account straight to their Google Drive. I can where did you go? Too many windows. I have a URL to their planning doc. I have a URL to their Airtable. I have the email that I sent to them that ChatGPT wrote. And if we go to their emails tab, if we refresh it, I guess, it will have applied the full planning workflow, which starts with an email that says, hi, Todd and Claire. And of course, right here, it looks pretty ugly because it has these BR tags. But if you actually look at how it's formatted in real life, it's here. It says, hi, Todd and Claire. Wow, what a unique and imaginative vision for your wedding. So, this all was written by ChatGPT. It went out. It's a completely custom email. Here's a link to their personal Google Drive. You probably wouldn't actually send this to a brand new lead, but I wanted to demonstrate that you can send that. If you set up your email templates so that, here in full planning, if you set up your email templates, so that the URL is just the custom mapped field to their Google Drive URL. You can send an email. This could even come far later in your workflow with a link to their Google Drive. So once they become a client, now you don't have to go in and type it in. It's just there. Yeah, so that's kind of the power of that. And there's 100 things you could do before sending someone to Dubsado. And that is why I always encourage people use your contact form in your website contact form instead of a lead capture form in Dubsado. All right, I am so sorry. I am out of time and I still want to take a couple of questions if they came up. What I can do, and let me know if this is okay, if I can just record after this, if I can record walking through the final Zap that I set up. And then if that could just be sent out with the recording, is that all right?
Yeah, that sounds great, Todd. Thank you so much for your time here. This is fantastic. But like you said, we do have a good number of questions that we should probably try to get through. And then if we have a little bit more time afterwards, if you're free, then we can do that last app. Totally. That sounds great.
Oh, no, I think my audio went out. Hold on.
I can still hear you. Okay. Chat,
yeah, I can hear you now.
Here, Todd? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. I was just saying that, let's totally get to some of the questions that are in the Q&A, and then we can go back and record that last app just for posterity there. I think you answered a lot of these questions that are here in the Q&A, but I'm happy to read them off to you. So folks were asking about the handwritten notes app as well as text messages. We did talk about those too. But big important one for you, I think. How much do you typically charge to help people set up Zaps? Jen was asking.
Yeah, it really ranges from the complexity of the Zap. Typically, most of my Zap setups start at about $150. But I would say that, sort of the median client ends up paying me about $300 for a medium complexity Zap. But people pay anywhere from about $150 to upwards of $1,000 for a Zap setup.
Yeah. That makes sense. So some of those longer, more branched Zaps, it can definitely take.
Yeah, if you have, if you have 100-step Zap, it's going to cost a little more than, and if there's a lot of code involved, especially.
Definitely. Just to double back to a question from a while earlier, and you may have covered it a little bit, but Rochelle was asking if they do use Show It, then they should keep using Dubsado for leads. Was there a specific rationale behind that? Was there functionality where that they couldn't quite do some of that preceding stuff ahead of the Zap?
Yeah, so Show It forms, at least in my experience, and maybe some of you have found workarounds that can prove me wrong, but Show It forms just aren't very dynamic or versatile. You can't have drop-down boxes. You can basically just have like text input. So, if you're saying, hey, which service do you want? You can't have like a drop-down box that says, I want full planning. You'd have to have them type it in, which just doesn't seem like a great experience. So in that case, I would stick with a lead capture form or move to a different web building platform. I'm not a big fan of Show It, so I would encourage that. I know Show It's pretty and easy to use, but it lacks a lot of functionality that other website builders have.
Totally. Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. All right, what else we got in here? Some of these were some more specific questions about like, can you do this and that? I'm not sure that we necessarily have quite the time to kind of get into the nitty gritty of those ones. But Rochelle also asked if we could track Dubsado KPIs, especially with leads on Airtable and ClickUp. I'm assuming that's yes.
Oh my gosh, yes. Here, let me actually show that. And it'll be part of the other recording that I send, but just so that you can see it. Oops, that was not meant to be what I did. Okay, I'm gonna share this screen. We're gonna go to Airtable here. And so like one of the things I was gonna do in the next thing that I'll record and send out with this, with the main recording, is tracking lost leads. So in this case, I'm tracking lost leads, and we're saying that the reason why they were lost, in this case, ghosted or found another provider. And we can even create interfaces in Airtable that have dynamic, you can set this up however you want. It doesn't have to be lost leads. It could be basically any metric that you want to track. But this tells me like, hey, 33% of my leads found another provider, 66% of my leads just ghosted me. And there have been 3 this year, 3 total. Obviously, probably your numbers are much larger than this, or I hope not. Maybe you don't get lost leads, and that's great for you. So you can definitely, by sending information through Airtable and keeping track of things here instead of just in Dubsado, you can create really, really sophisticated KPIs and metric tracking.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you, Todd. So one here from Tamika, and this I can actually answer this one. So she was asking if they can use an outside booking appointment system, so something like Calendly, to have a Zap then create an appointment in Dubsado. Here at Dubsado, our calls team actually uses a very similar Zap to what you're implying to create a project in Dubsado. We're setting that appointment date from Calendly as the project start date. So it's not quite a one-to-one, but Todd, maybe you can elucidate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, right now Dubsado's only action, so I showed Dubsado triggers and I showed a Dubsado action. The only Dubsado action possible right now is create project. So you can't create a scheduler or an appointment. But I think the best solution around that is to create a project with an event date. Even if you start a new workflow for that project that is like archive after that event date passes, then that project only exists for the life of from now until that Calendly appointment.
Totally. Yeah, that would definitely work. Cool. Let's see what else we got in here.
Oh yeah, thank you. Key performance indicators is what KPI is.
Oh yeah, thank you for that. All right. Some folks are asking in their second example if they could use something other than, I believe it was Airtable, to pull information from. I'm not super familiar with pulling information from outside sources, but I'm assuming it was a yes. If I go back into our chat, let me double check what they were asking about exactly. It was, so Jenna and Patty were asking about, like I said, in that second example, if they could pull from ClickUp instead of Airtable, or if they could pull from Google Sheets instead of Airtable, or Notion for even. So any of those.
Absolutely. Like I said, Zapier integrates with over 6,000 apps natively and thousands more not natively. There are some tricky coding things we can do to access some other apps that aren't supported. But yeah, the examples I showed today are just to get your gears turning. They are not an end all be all. They're not to say, hey, you must use Google Sheets for this, or you must use Airtable for that. Any app that is supported by Zapier and many that aren't, we can make work.
Totally. Cool. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to note too, because some of those apps, it's like, okay, this is a really specific scenario, right? But there's so much plug and play as far as like, hey, I use something slightly different. It's still going to work in just about the same way.
Yeah, I work with clients that use Airtable, Monday, ClickUp. There are hundreds of both kind of task management, project management apps, and database tracking apps. They all work similarly, and they all have Zapier integrations.
Totally. All right. So since we are a little bit over time, this will be the last question I pull from the Q&A from Chris here. So he asked, can we pull information from custom fields in Dubsado to utilize inside the Google Doc template? Thinking they're automatically creating their timeline or other items that would use information that is custom fields and not default to Dubsado.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, that'll be really good for you, Chris, to watch the additional video I record. That'll have some information about pulling custom mapped fields from Dubsado and putting them elsewhere.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll stop here. A little soft stop here for everyone that is watching. I know we're a little bit over time, so thank you all very much for attending. I hope you all learned a ton about Zapier. And again, this recording will be sent out as soon as it's done processing. So keep your eye out on your email if you wanted to rewatch the recording. If you have time and you want to stick around for Todd's last example here, please, by all means, we'll be here. We're going to do one more example. And otherwise, if you need to head out, have a great rest of your day. And thank you very much for attending.
And if you do if you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is hello@businesstechbff.com. I'm also going to throw something up on the screen right now. You should see just a pop-up pull up. This is a link to my website contact form, so you can reach out. If you fill that out, you'll actually get an automated response written by ChatGPT, just like the one you saw. And so you can see a Zap live in action from the moment you press submit. All right, so I'm going to take this down in 3, 2, 1. All right. If you didn't get that, you can reach out to me at hello@businesstechbff.com. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. If you really didn't click on that link or just are trying to have a hard time finding Todd, he's also listed on our certified specialist directory. You can always just search for him there as well. Cool. All right, Todd, I'll hand it back over to you to do that last example.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to share screen. Share screen. There it is. All righty. And, why are you not going? There it is. All right. Okay, so we're going back to Zapier here. What we're going to do is go to folder. We're going to look at sort of that branching logic that I talked about earlier, where we pull from project status handlers in Dubsado. So in this sort of sample Dubsado account that I've set up, I've created different project statuses. For leads, I have new lead, consultation booked, proposal sent, and then I have lost-ghosted and lost-found another provider. These are going to come into play. I think I already showed you a possible use case scenario for them, but we'll show how I actually process those as well. And then in my jobs, I have an active booking, a 3 weeks out, and a complete. And so one of the really cool use cases for using Dubsado is every time a project goes from one project status to another, we can trigger a Zap. So let's look at what that looks like. In the past, I used to recommend to people that we would start with a project status updated in Dubsado trigger, and then use a filter step to say, hey, if the project status is this, then do this. And then I would say create another Zap that also has this trigger and another filter, and another Zap with the same trigger and another filter for all of your project statuses. I don't recommend that anymore because Zapier now includes paths on their lowest tier paid plan. And so since you have access to paths, if you're paying the lowest tier, you might as well just use it instead of just the one filter and then having to create 50 different Zaps that all have the same trigger. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying every time a project status is updated in Zapier, we plug in our Zapier account, and then we pull the test information. I'm actually going to find new records here. There we go. Is this the right one? Yeah, this is the underwater wedding, underwater moon wedding, I should say. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find that corresponding record in Airtable. So we're going to say, and the reason we're doing this is now we can pull information that's both in Dubsado and Airtable, so we have more data to work with in subsequent steps. This isn't always 100% necessary. It's just necessary for the example I've put together. Sometimes you can go straight to a path step, but here I'm looking them up in Airtable by their email address. I'm searching by the email address that we got from Dubsado. Yes, I want it to be an exact match. If they don't exist, I want to create them. And I want their status in Airtable to match their status from Dubsado. The other thing I'm going to do here is remove lead and job. And actually, I guess in real life, I would put this in reverse. I would have removed lead job from status name first, but I've built it this way, so I'll keep it this way. So we're going to remove lead job from the name because they come from Dubsado. You can see this current status is lead, new lead. And when I bring them into Airtable or when I work with them anywhere, I don't really care about the fact that it says lead because new lead always means they're a lead. So I can just get rid of this lead thing. So we're doing that same split text feature we saw earlier in an earlier Zap, and we're making the separator a colon with a space. And so that we're able to take the second thing, or in this case, the last thing after the colon. So we're going to take the full, both words, new lead here after that colon. Okay, so then when we retest, we can see that they are called new lead. And so then I have a path that's broken out. And I can say, hey, I have one path for all of my lead statuses, and I have one path for all of my job statuses. One of the limitations of Zapier's Paths app is you can only have 5 things per path, but you can also have nested paths. So I typically say break it up into leads and then jobs. So then you can further break it up by the actual project status later on. So when we set up the rules for a path, we're saying if the current status contains the word lead, then go down the leads path. If the current status, path rules, if the current status contains job, then go down the jobs path. Now, if for some reason you have a project status that's like a lead project status, but you've written in the word job there with a colon, you may need to figure out some additional logic here. But generally speaking, this works for 99.9% of folks. Okay, and then let's say if the status is proposal sent, and you can see here I have current status contains proposal sent, then this is not something you would ever do in real life. This is just something I'm doing for this example. I'm going to create a random string, and that's just going to create some nonsensical thing. Here, if we go to data out, it's created the words rainbow Y. And I'm going to update the record in Airtable. I'm going to find that record by its record ID. This is really important. A lot of things in Zapier are recognized by ID, not by name. And it can also be tricky when you first click into something. There's going to be by default, it's going to go to this record tab instead of the custom tab. And if you choose one of these, it's not going to have a dynamic information. It's going to choose that same record every single time. And in this case, like, you don't even know what these mean. I don't know what these are because they're not human readable. So I want to go to custom and then dynamically populate this with the record ID from step 2, which is right here. Okay, you can enter some information about the Zap or about the lead, whatever you want to put in. In this case, I'm just going to put this random string Y. And then here, let's go ahead and say, oh, I didn't put an excited about. Oh, I need to do that. Here, maybe in my workflow, one of the things was a to-do that said, hey, make sure you add a custom mapped field that says what you're excited about. So here I'm going to click into custom map fields and I'm going to say excited about, and I'm going to say, I've never done a wedding on the moon or underwater. To do both will be an absolute thrill. And we can say save. There we go. I'm just going to change the project status so that we can retrigger this. We'll go back to this project status changed. I'll say find new records. It's going to pull in where it should. Oh, it's just taking its time. It's loading. Okay, there we go. This one should say in the project mapped fields, I've never done a wedding on the moon or underwater. To do both will be a thrill. Okay, and then I'm going to come over to update records in Airtable. And oops, test. We're going to say retest step. Oh, the app returned invalid permissions. I must be using like an expired account. Oh no, that's really unusual and not something I've encountered before. Okay, let's just go test this out. Okay, I don't have time to troubleshoot this, but generally speaking, what should happen is it should go into Airtable, wherever that is. That's not Airtable, this one. And it would update this lead with the information I wrote here. So to do both will be a thrill. I'm just making that right now. Okay, great. So, and then random string, this was going to be rainbow Y. Sorry, this is not a good example because, I'm typing things manually when it should be happening automatically. Darn this invalid permissions thing. It's very unusual. Maybe if I just say this and go back to, oops. Webinar examples and say grant access. And it said something went wrong. That is really weird. Let's hope. No, okay, it's not going to work. Anyway, trust me that most of the time it should work. I don't know why this isn't. I've never actually seen that error before. And then we're also going to send an SMS. It's going to pull information that says, just like, hey, I sent a proposal your way, another opportunity to send a text message. Okay. Similarly, if they're lost, we can get the reason that they're lost using a formatter step. And if we split the status by hyphen and take the last thing, this is going to say, well, in this case, it's not going to do anything because our lead is not lost. So actually, if we ran this test, it's going to pull, it's just going to take the whole thing and say lead consultation booked. But if your example, when you're actually processing the real life data, this is only going to be triggered by lost leads. And so there will be that hyphen that we had in our project status in Dubsado that you can see right here. And so that would pull through. Similarly, we're updating their record in Airtable. And a really important thing is, if you, from my earlier example, if you were creating a Google Drive for every lead you get, you don't want those to take up space in your account forever and ever. So you would move that file. Perhaps you could do a delete file step or just move file. In this case, I'm doing a move file to my archive area. So let's go ahead and test that. If we say continue, retest, we should see that this has moved from webinar examples to lost leads. And so now that's there and not taking up space in my main drive. All right. Similarly, we can do things for every, that's really all I'm going to show, but we could do things, an unlimited number of things based on what the project status is. The limit is your imagination. All right. So that is the fourth and final Zap I wanted to demonstrate. Thank you all for tuning in and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I just threw Dubsado's email as well as Todd's email there in the chat in case you didn't have it already. But again, last time, thank you all for being here. Todd, thank you very much for taking all this time to show us these apps. It's been fantastic. I've seen people in the chat that are absolutely loving it because I know that Zapier is something they're like, hey, I really want to do it, but they're daunted by it. Just rolling up your sleeves a little bit and showing it just the way you did was fantastic. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you. Everyone, we'll see you next time. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for sticking around and have a great rest of your day. All right. See you later.
Have a great one.